We'll probably get a few more people joining in on Zoom. I might repeat this welcome as they join us. My name is Stephen Seekels. I'm the co-graduate program director, and I'm joined by Ileana Lindsay and Monica Cardella. They'll be jumping in to help me co-present. But to start off, Ileana is going to give you a preview of today's agenda if you're joining us for all of today.
Good morning, everyone. So today we have you all, hopefully from 10:30 to about 2:30 today. We're going to begin our presentation with a welcome and program overview presented by both Dr. Cardella and Dr. Seekels. Then I'll jump in at about 11:30 to give you guys all just an overview over our admissions and our application process, and give you guys an opportunity to ask questions about your application, submitting applications, our department requirements, and also our university graduate schools requirements, and also give you an idea about the timeline of admission. Then we'll take a break at about 12:15 and return 12:30. At 12:30, we have a few of our current PhD students who are going to give brief presentations from each of their research groups. And then also you'll have the opportunity to ask them questions about their experience thus far in the program. Then at about 1:30, you're going to meet all of our faculty who are going to give you introductions about themselves, their current research projects, and any upcoming research projects that they're working on. And then at 2 o'clock, between 2 to 2:30, we'll open it up for questions and answers. But throughout our presentation, we'll stop and ask if anyone has questions, so everyone will have an opportunity to ask.
All right, thanks. So we'll do introductions now, and I'll put these instructions in Zoom chat. So just starting with you all, we'll introduce ourselves as well in a second, but if you could just put your name, where you're joining us from in this country or around the world, and what interests you about a PhD in engineering computing education. Does not have to be long. Just want to hear who we're talking to. Great, thanks, Hussein. Great, Talia, thanks. Great. Hi, Jade. So we have people joining from Miami, Pittsburgh, and Iran so far. And if you're joining us from somewhere around the world and it's a strange time there, thank you so much for taking the time. We're a very international, we've always had a very international PhD cohort and admissions. So there's no one perfect time to host such things. So we have to go with what works fairly well. All right. I don't know if, feel free to keep jumping in with introductions, but I'll move to, I can recopy instructions if someone comes in late, but I'll move to us introducing ourselves, but if you're still typing up yours, please add it. Oh, awesome. Great, thanks, Anike. I'm just guessing at how to pronounce everyone's names. I apologize if I'm wrong. Okay, so we are the School of Universal Computing, Construction, and Engineering Education. That is our department that houses the PhD in Engineering and Computing Education. We are 5 faculty with one. Hold on, I have a picture of that. We are the 5 faculty at the bottom. I am one of them. I'm Stephen Sequels. I'm also the co-graduate program director, so that's why I'm running this meeting. You'll meet the rest of the faculty, Brooke Burhani, Alexandra Strong, Stephanie Lunn, and Trina Fletcher at 1:30 today. You'll get more full introductions to all of them. I'll just have Dr. Cardella and Ileana say hi and brief introduction for yourselves.
Good morning, Monica Cardella. I am the director of Succeed, which means I'm the department head. I am also the co-graduate program director with Dr. Sequels, and also a professor of engineering and computing education. Good morning.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ileana Lindsay. I'm the Senior Program Coordinator for Succeed. I'm pretty much the first stop for all things related to our department. We are a small department within the College of Engineering and Computing, and I work very closely with both Dr. Cardella and Dr. Skills with the graduate program, and I also work very closely with Dr. Burhani, who is the undergraduate program director for our interdisciplinary engineering program.
Yeah. So for a lot of things, you'll be getting our contact info. For a lot of things, we're kind of like a 3-person team for anything ECED, admissions, program questions, connecting to an advisor. You can lob questions at all 3 of us. And if they're more logistical, Ileana is more the expert. And if they're more research interest areas, Dr. Cardella and I are probably going to be the ones fielding them, and something in between, we'll figure it out. So just wanted to let you know have us know each other a bit. Now I'm going to launch into a lot of informational slides. And I guess at this point, Ileana, could you start the recording? And if anybody would, I think it's more helpful to us to have the recording, but I want to give, speak up if that would be an issue for you, but potentially we've already done the kind of the introduction part. So it'll be a lot of me talking now. So I'm just trying to make the recording for the potential virtual attendees in the future. So hopefully that's okay. All right. Great. So yes, welcome for those joining just now. Welcome to the ECED PhD Open House. I've just done brief introductions. My name is Stephen Sequels. I'm the co-GPD, and I'll be presenting on our PhD program application process, just a lot of overview. For those in the Zoom room, feel free to put questions in the chat as they come in. I might be talking a lot, but we can definitely, between Monica, Ileana, and I, we can definitely all see these questions and get them answered. So please alert me if I miss a question. But I'm gonna begin. So as I mentioned, Succeed, that is the School of Universal Computing, Construction, and Engineering Education, which is acronymed as Succeed, so we'll refer to it as Succeed. Essentially, it's a Department of Engineering and Computing Education that was founded in 2018 in partnership with the STEM Transformation Institute, which I'll explain later. We believe we are the first engineering education doctoral program at a minority serving institution and the first computing education doctoral program in the United States, where fewer than 20 colleges or schools have focused on engineering education in the United States. So a pretty new field overall, but within that we still have some firsts. Succeed has 2 degree programs that we run. So that group of 5 faculty, we run also an interdisciplinary engineering bachelor's of science. So that's not what I'm presenting on today, but that is another main thing that we do, teach bachelor's degree students, undergraduates, and then this PhD that I'm presenting about, engineering and computing education. And both, although one is an engineering degree and one is an education degree, both are really interdisciplinary programs that have a broadening participation at their core, and we'll talk more about what that word means in a second, but broadening participation within the fields of engineering and computing. Here we are talking about that, Monica.
Yes, so I know some of you are here because of your interest in diversity, equity, inclusion. Even if you're not, the term broadening participation is a term that we use in both engineering and computing education, but it can mean different things to different people. So we just want to talk through some of the different ways that people use the term. So when some people think about broadening participation, they're thinking about just increasing diversity amongst a particular group of people. If you can click the animation. Yeah. So some of the questions then are just about who is or who's not participating in engineering and computing. So for example, I think we all know that within engineering and computing education, it's more dominated by men than women or people who don't identify with a binary gender. Maybe another question people might ask is who has access to engineering and computing experiences. So we're moving a little bit beyond just thinking about, counting the number of people from a particular group and thinking about how do we provide access to engineering and computing experiences. Some people might go even another step further. So if we keep going with the next, to go further to think about not just making sure people have access to those experiences, but how do we go about designing those experiences or those environments or the structures to be able to support the participation of groups who are traditionally excluded or underrepresented in engineering and computing. Maybe even taking it one more step further, you can think about within the ways that we go about teaching engineering and computing, or the ways that we go about defining what is engineering or what's not engineering, or we think about who is in engineering, who's not. We need to start to think about whose knowledge and ways of thinking and doing are valued. And so when you start to ask some of those questions and you're thinking about maybe culturally relevant or culturally responsive or even culturally sustaining pedagogies, thinking about place-based education strategies or community-based or asset-based. And I recognize that all those terms might be new to you, but those would be some of the terms that you'd be exploring as part of our program. What do all of those things mean and how are they different from each other? We also want to acknowledge, though, that there's still a whole lot that we don't know, that we need to keep learning about, we need to keep discovering to really get to what's at the core of this issue of some people being overrepresented, some people being excluded from engineering and computing, some people being marginalized. So that's a lot of the work of what we do in our department through our research, but also our teaching and the way that we engage in the community.
Thank you. Okay. Here is a mission statement. What we seek to do as a department: succeed faculty research and promote evidence-based approaches that broaden participation and improve the educational success for all current and future engineering and computer science students at FIU and beyond. In seeking that, we develop our students as leaders, collaborate with engineering and computing industry, engage in innovative research, and use evidence-based approaches in our teaching, and consider equity, diversity, and inclusion as core values. So each of you, if you apply and if you are admitted and if you join us, you will help shape this program and this community during your time here. We are I mentioned some of the leadership, but there's also knowing that the program, the first PhD students were admitted 3 years ago. So we have three incoming cohorts now. So you are the fourth. So we have some things under our belt. We know the program has taken some shape, but there's still a lot left to figure out and explore. So not only will you help define research areas, define broadening participation, push the boundaries of engineering and computing education and innovation forward, but you'll also be helping co-create this new novel PhD program. Develop as leaders, independent scholars, and educational change agents, and push us to think differently about our own research, teaching, and leadership. And we're very excited to have you here today. FIU is the fourth largest university in the nation, and 80% of its students are from historically underrepresented groups. And educational change can happen here, and the research and curricular transformation can support student success outside of FIU as well. So we consider, making educational change at FIU particularly important, and we're all in the process of disseminating that, meaning talking to others about that change, kind of helping spread our insights and innovations across the country. Some of the ways that we research, some of the impacts and change we pursue are in the classroom. These are some snapshots from our own teaching or our own projects, related. So in the classroom, meaning related to like how education happens, how teaching happens, how students learn, how culturally responsive pedagogy, as Monica mentioned, or along pathways. So thinking about more about access, thinking about which institution types, which support strategies can help students towards completing their engineering degrees and matriculating into their careers. So we are a very collaborative department. So we are successful and innovative through collaboration. So a smattering of the many people involved with our PhD program include other engineering and computing departments. We have great relationships with them. The Succeed College of Engineering and Computing staff. We have our own engineering, computing, education faculty and staff. And then I have a slide about the STEM Transformation Institute and CDSEC, which are more other units. So STEM Transformation Institute, that is a interdisciplinary science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education research unit that positions FIU as a living laboratory for developing future STEM professionals and broadening participation, transforms classroom, programmatic, institutional, and educational practices, and facilitates the adoption of evidence-based teaching and learning practices across campus. Really kind of like a sister program to Succeed. In Succeed, we focus on engineering, computing, education. We are kind of umbrellaed in and a part of STEM Transformation Institute, which focuses on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. When I think about what STEM Transformation Institute can help offer us, it's a large community. You can see that's a picture of us. I think I'm in that picture. The people there's a larger community of people engaged in similar work and slightly different work that we can learn together from. There are some important programs. They run an LA Learning Assistant program for undergraduate education transformation and a teacher preparation program called FIU Teach. So both of those are run by STEMTI and important resources. And then I have put physical resources as well as these people resources. So that's the building, Viertes House on main campus. That's the building that STEM Transformation Institute is inside. I wasn't able to snap a good picture of like where some of the office space and grad student spaces are in either of our buildings, but basically we have some in the Engineering and Computing Center, and we have some PhD space in the Viertes House. So that's another thing that we have. And STEM Transformation Institute is also well connected with our K-12 schools, local Miami-Dade schools, et cetera. So connections to the broader community, I think, is another key feature. So the Center for Diversity and Student Success in Engineering and Computing, CDSEC. I know there's lots of acronyms, so I will try to keep explaining my acronyms as I introduce them. CDSEC aspires for innovation, creativity, ingenuity, equity and inclusion in engineering and computing. That's their mission statement. And they provide high quality services and programs to ensure current and future students at the College of Engineering succeed and reach their full potential during their academic journey at FIU and in their future careers. And the way they help us do that is they have scholarships, they support undergraduate research, they do a lot of K-12 outreach, they do other pre-college programs, they run tutoring for a lot of the engineering classes, and they support student organizations. So we are very sister organization with CDSEC as well. We are very adjacent to them physically. We see them every day, and we work closely with them on a whole lot of these programs because we're more kind of on the research and running academic program sides, and they're more on the student support, student programming side. So those can really work side by side really well. You'll also collaborate. This was on the theme of collaboration. So you'll collaborate with the ECED doctoral student community. These are most of, I did not squeeze our newest cohort onto the top is essentially our first cohort. There's some mix of people because as the program started, it's hard to define exactly when the new cohort began. But 2 years ago, at the bottom here are the second cohort of people, and then there's a new cohort that I should have squeezed onto the slide. But there's even more people, 5 more people in this community now, and we're also very collaborative. We work a lot through research groups that each faculty member runs, and there's cross communication across research groups. So you really form tight bonds with the other doctoral students in the community, and that's an important part of supporting you as well. You'll meet the doctoral students later today. Some of them, we won't be able to fit all 20 in that meeting. So I'm going to go over doctoral studies in engineering and computing education. So to give more insight into what it means to do a PhD in engineering and computing education. I'll just pause since we're transitioning topics, make sure it seems like no questions in the chat, but feel free to throw questions in the chat about what I've been presenting. I'll just pause a second because I could use the break. Okay. Great. Thanks for supplementing with detail on what I'm saying, Ileana. All right. So what are doctoral studies in engineering and computing education? What is a PhD in ECED? So to help characterize that, if we think back to what it meant to be an undergraduate, maybe some of you are an undergraduate, but if it's thinking back, then reminding yourself, there were assignments, there were studying with classes, studying for your classes with friends, taking exams. You may have worked full-time, part-time, work study, or you may not have worked, developing a breadth of understanding about your discipline with some depth, participating in extracurriculars, and preparing for job search graduate school applications. So a lot of analogies to a PhD in engineering and computing education I'll show here. So as a PhD student in engineering and computing education, you'll be similarly reading and writing weekly or bi-weekly for classes and research. So that could be like regular homework, kind of similar to what you'd expect in an undergraduate. But if you did an undergraduate engineering degree or computing degree, more reading and writing. I can guarantee more reading and writing in a PhD than a STEM major. This was one of my big wake-up calls in being a PhD student years ago. Collaborating with students and faculty on research projects. So research is the big driver of a PhD. So you're doing research, you're being prepared to do research through your classes, you're engaging in research with your advisor and through a lot of your graduate assistantships that they will involve research duties. And then you'll be working towards completing program milestones, comprehensive exams, proposal, dissertation, which is really you conducting your own research, you taking ownership of your research. And this is all research on engineering and computing education. So on the topics we're talking about, broadening participation, on improving classroom practices. This is not conducting engineering research, just to clarify. So you may be working as a research or teaching assistant, those are for full-time students. If you join us as a part-time student, yeah, you may have another full-time job, and you may not take one of the jobs during your PhD. So if you take the research teaching assistant, that comes with with a stipend and tuition reimbursement. But some people already have full-time job that they can't step away from for their PhD, and they choose to stay full-time employed elsewhere. So either we have lots of folks doing both of those options, but I will sometimes refer to research assistants, graduate assistantships, and those do not apply if you're a part-time student, just FYI. Developing expertise in a particular area of interest, it's really important to figure out what you care about, what you are interested in, what you are passionate about, what you want to learn more about, because a PhD takes a while, and you're going to want to develop develop yourself, like focusing during the PhD on developing yourself, developing your interests, and pushing yourself forward in them. Participating in extracurriculars and attending conferences. So conferences are a chance to network with other people like you around the country and around the world that are doing and also similar engineering education or STEM education research. And preparing for the job market, it sounds crazy to, before you're even in the program, we need to get you out the door to your next job. But it is very important to think, like if some PhD programs would be focused only on producing, say, faculty, like I am a faculty, so I think everybody should become faculty like me. Our program definitely wants to support you in whatever journey, whatever career path is right for you. So we will be actively talking, advisors, professors, all of us will be actively talking about your goals and where you're headed, so we can help align your experience and help kind of create the program to be supporting you to get for the next step after the PhD. So no pressure to know what you're doing after the PhD today, but it is important to us to be able to support you wherever that goes. So thinking about how much time do we have? We're already halfway through. I'm going to just pose this as a thought question and not an interaction question. What does it mean to develop expertise in engineering and computing education? So how does an engineering and computing education impact the design of this plane? I'll just stop speaking for a second and have you think for a second. So yeah, we can see in a plane design many different areas of engineering. You might have your structural engineering, keeping the plane together, electrical engineering, and computer science, kind of making the plane controls operate. You have a lot of aerodynamics, mechanical engineering, figuring out how to keep the plane afloat in the air. There's more. I'm not an aerospace engineer. But thinking about the ways that an engineering and computing education PhD may have impacted all parts. If we backtrack to when did the engineer working on the electrical system first spark an interest in engineering? Was that in a formal learning setting, in an informal camp? Like what were some of those original motivators? What kind of prepared them well and kept them going at different stages of their career? What supported them in their team dynamics, in the workplace? I mostly speak about education as education, but workplace education and team dynamics could be considered a part of education as well. So what was supporting productive understanding of this work in the workplace? So we can see ourselves, engineering and computing education does not have to be kind of esoteric or theoretical. It doesn't have to be removed from real world impacts. We can see it as helping, we can have better understanding about how to support the education of engineers and computing professionals, and that can have great impact on the world. So pitching that impact. We these are some of the professional bodies. American Society for Engineering Education at the top is the main one I'll mention, but and the special interest group in computer science education I'll also mention. But there's a larger community conducting engineering and computing education research, and that will all be a part of the community you enter into as you're joining this PhD. I'll do some next program overview. Let me just check at each transition. There's a question in the chat about, can I apply to the PhD with my bachelor's degree? Yes, there is no requirement to have a master's degree or any graduate degree. Bachelor's is a great starting point and a minimum. All right, so engineering and computing education at FIU. The ECED doctoral program aims to prepare students to conduct and direct research in engineering and/or computing education, to design and assess inclusive, innovative, and effective educational experiences, to address critical issues in equity, diversity, and inclusion with engineering and computing education, and to pursue a diverse set of professional trajectories both inside and outside of the classroom. Some more details about our PhD. Most of this, doing some coursework at the beginning, moving to something called comprehensive exams, moving to your dissertation proposal, and proposal defense, and moving to your dissertation defense. That part is fairly standard for other PhD programs you might consider. This could be a new figure for you, but that's a fairly standard type of trajectory. We do have up in the yellow there a teaching requirement, so we do give all of our students an experience with teaching. That's important to us, particularly for being an engineering and computing education PhD. We want to make sure that our students are prepared and ready to enact change inside the classroom as well. And just a recognition that we often speak about these processes as very linear. They are also a little bit more about figuring out what these things mean, figuring out your own journey with them. So they're not quite as linear as they seem. This is an overview of like a kind of topical overview of pieces of our engineering computing education PhD. So we have core ECED courses that develop a foundation in the history and understand practices of the engineering and computing education field. We have research methods courses where you learn how to do research. We have ECED concentration or deep dive. This would be essentially the place to go further in depth with your research space, broaden your understanding, or focus on future career pathways. These are, if you were in an undergrad program, we'd call these probably your electives, but they are kind of precious electives. They are your opportunity to like really become an expert and like a specialist in an additional area that is either important to your research or important to your future career pathway. So those are pretty wide open, but very important. There is the teaching requirement that I just mentioned. There is a STEM education research seminar to engage with scholars and change agents in the STEM education community. And we have a requirement to take some engineering and computing disciplinary specialization courses to develop expertise in a technical domain to enable boundary crossing. So, most of the rest of the courses I just named are education or education research courses. So they are not engineering courses. They are more education courses about engineering and computing. The engineering and computing disciplinary specialization courses are the only courses that are where you are required to take graduate level coursework in engineering or computing. So if you come in with a master's in one of these types of subjects, it will likely be waived. But if for coming in with a bachelor's, you would enroll in some master's level coursework in one of the other engineering or computing departments around the college. That it both enables boundary crossing as well as practically, if you wanted to be a faculty member in a college of engineering, this is helpful credential to show that your teaching ability in the College of Engineering. I have a different view of our engineering computing education coursework, mostly the same, but I wanted to give some more detail on what some of our core courses are because they speak to some of the identity of our department. So in the core courses, we have Foundations of Engineering and Computing Education Scholarship. That's kind of like the research foundation. You'll understand the history and philosophy of engineering and computing education research in that course. Equity in STEM education. So broadening participation, equity, diversity is central, and that's one of our core courses. Professional development in engineering and computing education. This is an early course, really focused on helping your entry into the world of engineering and computing education and helping guide being a grad student as well as a researching and practicing professional, and methods and practices in engineering and computing education to help think about your role conducting research in the broader engineering and computing education community. In the teaching requirement, we do have a course called Foundations of Engineering and Computing Teaching and Learning. Some of our course titles sound the same, so I bolded the significant word here is teaching and learning. So that kind of gives you your foundation, your preparation for teaching and learning. This will be appropriate and interesting whether or not you have teaching experience. I'm teaching the course right now, and I have people who've been teaching for 10, 15 years, gaining a lot from the course, and people who are brand new. We read, talk, think about teaching and learning in that class. And then that is your stepping stone towards the mentor teaching practicum, where you, with a mentor, with a faculty mentor, are engaged in teaching, designing your own lessons and teaching a small part of a course. Other pieces and electives include research methods, specialization electives, engineering, computing, disciplinary coursework, research credits, dissertation credits, and seminar. But I mentioned most of that on the last page. I just wanted to give some more of the detail, especially on that top category. So as you develop as an independent scholar, you'll be exploring different areas through your graduate assistantship, research assistantship, or independent studies. So these provide you an opportunity to hone your research skills in areas. You'll learn from your peers, a research advisor, and a dissertation committee. You will not just have one advisor, you'll also, by year 2, you'll be naming a committee that will help guide and review your work through the rest of the dissertation process. You'll be both in the classroom and you'll get out of the classroom to attend conferences, collect data, and engage in the larger community. You will be coming in with some assumptions and examining assumptions about education. A lot of the writing will make you rethink and question things that you maybe once knew. You'll read, write, revise, read, write, revise. So a lot of reading, a lot of writing, and when you're writing, there's a whole lot of revising and there's more reading. So just wanted to be transparent about that. I am myself not necessarily a natural voracious reader. So if that's not you, don't worry. We can support you in that transition from a more STEM field to a more reading and writing focused field. A whole lot of us have gone through it as well. You'll select your research focus and begin to craft your proposal with faculty and peer support. And you'll then do the work. You'll conduct your research with support. These are not an exhaustive list of possible research areas. As Dr. Cardella mentioned, broadening participation would be a big one. We could umbrella under diversity inclusion in engineering and computing and equity and culture. But some other topics that would still very often intersect with broadening participation: pre-college, pre-K-12 education, community college pathways, minority serving institutions, educator development, retention, graduation, student experiences from gender, race, socioeconomic status, etc., computational thinking, and design education. Some of these might be buzzwords. I never know exactly, once I've been in this field for 10 years, I never know exactly which ones to clarify, but as you're thinking about putting together your applications, you'll be explaining your interests to us, and think about exploring some some of these words, and finding out what they mean to you, and if they spark an understanding of what you've been interested in, want to focus on in PhD. It's still early. You don't need to have a complete understanding of all these words. Just giving an overview. What can you do with a PhD in engineering and computing education? You can become a faculty like me in an engineering education department or school. You could be a faculty in an engineering or computer science department at various institution types. So I am at what we call an R1 institution, where typically those are ones that offer PhDs. Other types, liberal arts colleges, et cetera, like typically don't focus as much on PhDs, so they wouldn't be having an open house for you now, but there are lots of other faculty jobs out there, and they come with different responsibilities, different pressures, there's different, they work for different people. So those are good options. You could be administrator of an engineering diversity program, an on-campus design center, a service learning program, a first-year program. You could be K-12 teacher or involved in K-12 kind of leadership, administration. You could be nonprofit foundation staff, workforce development specialists, corporate trainers, consultants, designers for education-based products and industry, science museum staff, policymakers, and many other positions. This whole field of engineering education, Monica was at the was at a program that founded in, was it 2004? Am I right about that, Monica?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Pretty sure.
Founded in the 2000s for sure. So the whole kind of like, kind of impact and like where engineering and computing education PhDs can head is still really new, so really being developed, and there are always new. It's still a growth field, a growth area. So there's going to be more impacts and more types of positions that that you may help us realize and invent. And yeah, as you go through this program, we will make an effort to connect you with lots of people who are already taking a lot of these different pathways. A lot of us who are faculty in an engineering and computing education department have friends who took other pathways as science museum staff, as nonprofit foundation staff. So we can, these are some of the ways that we can help support your trajectory in not just the one narrow academic path, if that's your choice. Just a note about funding. Why did it go away? Funding. So for full-time graduate students, funding will mean a research, teaching, or graduate assistantship. It could mean an FIU University Graduate School Fellowship. It could mean an external fellowship. This could include the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. Yes, and there would be some restrictions for a few of these. There would be some restrictions on international students and employment outside of FIU. So for some of these fellowships in FIU and external fellowships are reserved for only domestic students. Research, teaching, graduate assistantships are available for international and domestic students. So just wanted to clarify that. And again, if you're a part-time graduate student, you may engage in some research employment. You could engage in hourly research employment. You could pursue an external fellowship, but you may likely just keep an external position and take your classes more part-time. I think I'm going to move right into application. Is there anything in the chat? Monica, Ileana, you're handling questions. We don't need to pause to talk about questions. Okay, awesome.
Correct.
All right, so the Engineering Computing Education PhD application. Here is your overview. Ileana, I know you have logistical supports on this as well that are coming later, but if there's anything I missed that you want to add, feel free to jump in. So your doctoral application components here are so hold on, let me tell you your deadlines. Priority deadline for fall 2023 admissions, December 15th. That will most apply to people who, it will frankly mostly apply to domestic full-time students, because there is a priority admissions deadline for us to be able to nominate people for these FIU university fellowships. So we can talk more about that if that applies to you, but that's the reason for that fairly a bit earlier than we have had this in the past deadline there. Then our regular admissions deadline, we will definitely consider all applications received by January 15th. So kind of no pressure to have, you can have it by the priority deadline, especially if you want to be considered for one of the university fellowships, if that applies to you, but we will definitely still consider all applications via January 15th. And then there is technically kind of like a last call is February 15th. At that point, it's kind of past our admissions. It's kind of in a, we will likely still receive your application if it comes after January 15th and before February 15th, but we will already have made some decisions based on January 15th. So really remember January 15th and maybe December 15th if that deadline applies to you. So in your application, you will be creating a statement of purpose. I think I have more notes on that in a second, what a statement of purpose is. You'll be sending in transcripts from bachelor's and master's if you have it. Send all transcripts. We have more notes on all of these things. These are just giving you all the components. 3 letters of recommendation. GRE scores are waived for fall 2023 applications. So if you happen to have already taken the GRE or just enjoy tests, you could feel free to send scores, but we don't actually, we conduct GRE blind admissions typically. So yeah, they will, you do not particularly need to send them to us. They are waived for fall 2023 applications. We do need a TOEFL, an IELTS, or a Duolingo score for international students for English language proficiency. That's still a university requirement. It hasn't been waived, so more information on that. And very encouraged, when I read these applications, it's sometimes really hard to understand the whole picture of yourself unless there's a CV, curriculum vitae, or resume attached. So I believe it's still optional, but very encouraged to include a resume. A statement of purpose is a 1 or 2 page single-spaced statement that describes your professional goals, how the program would help you achieve those goals, and what experiences you have prepared you to pursue a doctoral degree in engineering and computing education. So some questions you might want to reflect on. You could screenshot these, have them for as you're preparing the application. You might want to ask yourself, what impact do you want to have after receiving a PhD? Or more broadly, how do you want to change the world? It's a PhD is kind of not a statement of purpose is kind of not a place for great humility. you can be bold. You can kind of say bold and realistic, I think are good adjectives to think about. But yeah, you can think about what impact, what change you really want to see as a result of your work. You can also reflect on what areas of research are you interested in today and why. So definitely, it is a really appropriate and helpful thing for the applicant to clarify their research interests. If you only describe your professional accomplishments and leave out the research interests, it is a lot harder to kind of make sense of like, what will this PhD mean to you? Where would you fit? Who might your advisor be? So really declaring your interests is really helpful. We know that you'll be, new to some of the terms that might help you describe your interests, and that is fine. Put them in whatever terms make sense to you. Do a little Googling if it helps, but don't be afraid of kind of trying on the idea of explaining your impact, explaining your interests, and what evidence can you share of your preparation. So kind of make a case for yourself and why you are ready to conduct a PhD. So you've heard a little bit about what's involved in a PhD, and we're around and welcome if you want to ask more about what's involved. But yeah, as I mentioned, it involves a lot of reading, it involves a lot of writing, and involves a lot of collaboration, involves a lot of independent work. So when through your research or professional experiences, coursework, volunteer work, or clubs and extracurriculars, have you felt like you've gained that experience that's relevant to that and gained that preparation so that you're really ready for the PhD. And yeah, tell us some stories about some of that. Take some time to give us some background, but make it a very directed background. Like, how does that background help you be ready and motivated and interested in this PhD? And a really important one is why FIU, like have an answer to why you want both the engineering and computing education PhD and why this department, why maybe an advisor, maybe a specific person, maybe a few advisors, what is drawing you to this program? That's really, really helpful to state in a statement of purpose. Some other reminders, share your passions. Yeah, so don't be afraid to be clear about what really makes you tick, what you're really passionate about. It makes the writing more fun to read, and it helps your message be stronger. Don't share your drafts with me, but share your drafts with share your drafts with friends, share your drafts with peers, people you know, not people who are not faculty in the program who are going to have to evaluate and decide between the applications. If you send me one, I just won't be able to read it. But share your drafts, and a friend, a parent, a sibling, a person who maybe has, you know, who you meet, who maybe knows something about these programs. You'll get lots of useful perspectives from all manner of people, not just the PhDs themselves. And yeah, you'll get that all manner of feedback, and then really try to keep that personal statement true to you. Like don't just be pulled, ooh, I think this paragraph doesn't make sense, wipe it away. You know, think carefully about that feedback and see how to make the final document make sense and be really true to you. And check for spelling and grammar, and then check again, because that is the type of thing I wouldn't want to punish somebody for spelling and grammar mistakes, but it does like reduce the feeling that this was like a very careful application. So you've got tools like Grammarly, you've got other people who can check your spelling and grammar. You know, use those so that your final product is really, you could be really proud of. Ileana, when do you take over? Is this around time when you want to take over?
This is your last slide.
Okay, so what happens after you press submit? The admissions timeline. Upon submission, there's a review of your application by UGS to kind of see if everything's complete. Please, there can be hiccups in this process if your things kind of aren't completely complete. So try to do your own homework on, did all of my reviewers send things in? Did my transcripts send? We will also chase you for these things when the application is incomplete, but you will be slowing down our process, which then slows down everybody's process. And it could end up hurting your chances of being considered at the priority round or at the like official round. So as you can see, there's a stage of UGS, that's the University Graduate School, before Succeed is even, our department's even allowed to see the application. So with that in mind, that's one of the reasons why you want to be really, really organized and on top of it, and just have the application completely beautiful, 100% in, so that we don't have to like wait to find out and then ask, like, did you send it to UGS and why have they not sent it to us? You know, be really on top of things is my suggestion. In January, Succeed will, ECED will be reviewing your application. We will then have to make a recommendation for admission. You will receive the recommendation. Yeah, for the first priority. There will be probably, there may be some waitlist and decline notifications. In mid-February, we will invite those students that we've recommended for admission to a admitted students event. At that, we try to have more understanding of, more meeting with more of the department for more clarity around initial advisor match, interim advisor match. That's one of our goals for that meeting. Then we'll make offer letters, including assistantship information, including that interim advisor match in early March. And then April 15th is the deadline for accepting that assistantship. I'll turn it over to Ileana, and I have to go to a different meeting, so I'm therefore going to pause for a second, stop share. Ileana will be sharing
Thank you, Dr. Secules. So I know that this has been a complete information overload for everyone. So while we're transitioning with the presentation, I want to give everybody an opportunity just to take a 2 minute break, maybe stretch, and kind of get a little bit of a breather. And then I'll begin at about 11:31. Is that good for everyone? All right, awesome. All right, go ahead.
Let me know if you can see my slides.
Yes.
Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to Succeed Open House, and this is like a grad panel now. So I'm Maimuna Begum Koli. So just a bit about myself, that I completed my bachelor's in computer science and engineering from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. And I joined FIU as a CS PhD, like computer science PhD program at 2019. And I transitioned into engineering and computing education at the start of like fall 2020. So some of the research work that I've been doing involves exploration of student experiences, like different sort of experiences in classroom, out of classroom experiences with a specific focus on mental health and well-being. And I'm also trying to read a lot about what is the university's role to support students as a whole, not just their curricular activities. So currently I'm working as a graduate research assistant in the Audio for Inclusion project, which is like a very cool project, and why I'm gonna tell you now. So this is the overview figure of the Audio for Inclusion project, which I'm working on. So the problem this project is trying to address on that, like there are a lot of student experience of marginalization happening inside classrooms, and faculty are in a position to help, but sometimes they are not being able to because they don't have a deep understanding of like what is the students going through, their lived experiences. And also there are lots of marginalization, diversity, inclusion literatures out there, but this research dissemination does not really make the student experiences accessible towards faculty. So in this research, we are trying to recruit nationally 20 students who has different sort of identity, social identities, and we are conducting interviews with them. And we are trying to create a narrative, and narrative is more like a script of their experiences, which we can re-record with the actors so that this can become a more like a audio resource for different sort of faculties, because the journal articles we publish is not really that much accessible to us faculty, because most of the time faculty don't read outside of their research areas. So having another sort of dissemination method will help them to learn about the students a lot. So in this project, I've been working since 2020. So currently we are in between of this step 2 and step 3. We have already conducted most of our interviews, and in the process of creating scripts so that the student actor can read more about. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the problem that I already mentioned. So our research community wants to focus more on impact and change, and if ever we see any sort of like what is the research purpose of it, most of the time these statements or maybe these words come about like we would like to make some impact, we want to create something, we want to change something. However, our review of different NSF and RFE, which is like 2 of the funding programs. So we read their project summaries, and we basically saw that the most of the time dissemination was only mentioned, like we will disseminate in multiples. We will disseminate our research findings. Some of the time dissemination outlets were mentioned, like we will disseminate in journals or maybe conferences, we will organize workshops. But there were very few who are making dissemination as more like a focal point, like we are doing in our Audio for Inclusion project, where we are proposing audio as more like a dissemination method. So this figure is more like the traditional form of research which has been happening with the student experiences, like we select a student who has some sort of identities, and then we conduct qualitative interviews with them. And then the researcher basically tries to find some trends or maybe common occurrence, what is happening with the student experiences. And then they present their findings and recommendation in various journals and conferences. with this hope that like faculty will read papers, gain insight, take on recommendation, and probably act more inclusively. So in this part where faculty papers gain insight, the researcher does not really have that much control over what faculty is reading or not. So we identified there is 3 limitations of traditional research method, like engineering faculty do not read long journal papers, which is outside of their research areas. And also when we find course or maybe we find some common trends that happening in students' lives, there is a loss of immediacy of student emotions, because in written form, we cannot really express their emotion, what is going on when they are saying their stories to us. And also the dissemination is more like a limited and ineffective as an interchange strategy, which is we found in our literatures. So if we put both of these projects side by side, then we can see the difference, like what we are doing differently. So we are recruiting students with some marginalized identities. We are conducting narrative interviews. And then in this step, we are basically trying to do something different. We are treating each participant individually, not just finding some snippets of their experiences. We are trying to retain their experience as a whole. So we will obviously publish some of these in different outlets, but at the same time, we are also trying to create a de-anonymized script, which the actors will read, and we will create some audio resource, which we will basically probably play in different faculty development workshop or even some conferences. So this is where we are basically trying to make some alternate way in terms of dissemination. So right now I'm gonna play a pilot version of our audio. So let me know if you can listen it well.
I know.
Okay. Yeah, let me know in chat if this can, you can hear it. And just to give a little context, this participant is a Latina female international undergraduate engineering student who deals with mental health concern. So this is one story of her life. So the story name is Why Would I Lie? Disclosing and Delegitimizing Mental Health Issues. I'm gonna start playing now, and let me know if you cannot hear it well.
I know that professors are very busy and it's hard, but it would really help if they could make themselves a little bit more approachable, or just for there to be a way for the students to tell the professor, hey, this is not really an excuse, or I want you to be lenient with me, but I am struggling with this, or I'm having a hard semester and I really would appreciate your help, and to be able to talk to you. Like this spring, I was taking a class that was making me so very anxious because they expected us to know a much higher level of MATLAB than we had studied before. And I hate MATLAB, straight up. And I would get so anxious. My symptoms were getting worse. I was starting to not be able to sleep. I was starting to feel a racing heartbeat and loss of breath and all these panic thoughts and fatigue. And I wasn't able to finish until a week later, a week after it was due. And I was so stressed because I was like, my grade is gonna suck if I don't turn this in. So I finally had to reach out to the professor and tell him, hey, I suffer from anxiety, and this was a really hard week for me to do this report. Could you still accept it? And it was just terrifying to me that I had to do this. It was terrifying to have to go up to the professor and explain the situation. And there was a point where he was just like, you're not lying, right? I just started tearing up because it was like, oh my God, hi, like I'm making myself so vulnerable to you. I'm telling you something that only my boyfriend knows, not even my parents know. My point of view is like, how horrible of a person do you have to be to lie to your professor? And your excuse is, I get anxious? I absolutely understand his questions. It's valid. Like I know a lot of people don't understand anxiety. My father is one of them. People don't understand how debilitating it is. If you don't experience it, you really can't understand it. But it's just like, why would I lie? That's such a horrible thing. I'm a human being. I can have faults. I can have issues too. And also, I'm a good student. If this is the 3rd class we've had together, you should know I'm a good student.
So yeah, that is one of the story the students shared with us. So if you have any comments or anything, you can use the chat option to comment on things. So I think
I know.
that's all from me. So if you want to learn more about us, we have a website which is called equity.fiu.edu, and we are also on Twitter with the handle equity_FIU. So yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you, Maimuna. And I do want to say that with Dr. Sukul's equity group, he does allow for prospective students to participate sometimes, just to get an idea as to what they do in that research group. So if you do want more information, let me know. I'll share the information from Dr. Sukul's with you. All right, so Morgan and Vion, you guys are up next.
Great. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can share my screen here. We have so many things open, so give me 1 second, you guys. Vion, were you able to get the link to the presentation, or you still need me to share it?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, you need me to share it?
Yeah.
Or... Okay.
Yes. Do you want me to share now?
Yeah, I think you should share because I got to do a real quick introduction and then Jet.
Okay. So, all right. Can you guys say?
Yes. So you just present. You can just hit the present at the top.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Just to confirm, Ozane, can you share with us where you are joining this meeting from? Let's know where you are joining from. It's 12:52 p.m. here in Miami, Florida. Can you type that in the chat box just to confirm part of the world here? All right, my name is Vion. Sorry, because of the challenge with bandwidth, I had to put up my video. So I came into FIU this last summer. That was in May specifically. So I was a student, a PhD student in engineering education at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. But because of the law of what's the program, that is the Succeed program in FIU affords me, I had to do the switch in the summer. And one of the things that struck me as soon as I did the switch to FIU, myself and a couple of classmates, colleagues in the program went to the ASWE, that's the American Society of Engineering Education Conference in Minnesota in June. And I was blown away with the collaborative spirit that was engendered, that was amongst the students. And I kept asking myself, how did these guys get to this stage, or what was the input of the faculty to engendering such positive spirit amongst the team? I mean, I was blown away sincerely. And ever since that time, I knew this is home for me sincerely. One of the things that happens to students who just came to another city, another country, another state, another program is the challenge of getting into your stride, settling down. But when I saw the positive spirit amongst the students, the faculty, I knew this was home for me. And ever since that time, I've gotten into a cruise control. I mean, I will have struggled sincerely with my classes and research, but because of the support of the students, the faculty, Ileana has been awesome. I mean, I have called this place home away from home for me. All right. So it's been an awesome experience for me ever since I came around. And so myself and a couple of students, Morgan, one of the students on this call, we are students in the Readers research team. All right, so Readers is just a team headed by Dr. Strong, Alexandra. What do? We explore and impact education and engineering by leveraging a systems perspective. So we have a couple of students within the team. This is Vion, the person talking to you now. So I'm a PG student. I'm one of the students there. Then Morgan also on this call, she's equally a student.
Yeah,
But then she's
so let me give my introduction real quick and then I have to go. Sorry about that. So as you can see, my name is Morgan Haley McKee, she, her pronouns. I'm an assistant director of technology services at FIU Online. So I help manage the LMS system, the Canvas system that we use for our learning platform. And I'm a second-year doctoral student also under Dr. Strong, and part of the ResDes team. I am, as you can tell, a part-time student because I have a full-time job. I started my career path actually in film for my undergrad. I have a bachelor's of science in motion pictures and a second major in computer science. So that's where the technical computing aspect came in. And from there, I've worked and gone to school all my life and received a master's in engineering management, concentration on entrepreneurship from FIU. And now, as you can tell, I'm going into a second-year doctoral program with Succeed. Vion, you can take it away. I added the information about Amplify on those next two slides, on the next three slides there.
okay, guys. Sorry, just wanted to confirm. Can you guys see the slide very well?
Yes.
I've not. Okay, it's very
So
okay.
you're
good.
not
All
in
right.
you're not in presentation mode. So you see right above where it says present.
And record, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So go to audio recordings. Is that gonna be it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might. There you go. That's
There
the
you-
notes
yeah.
though.
Oh, okay. So sorry, my first time of using Canvas to present. I mean, I've not. Do I go back to editing or start? I don't know now. I can see. Can you guys see something on my screen at this time?
Well, you want to click
Uh,
allow.
Oh yeah. Okay. I did that already. Then I get back to like the.
No camera.
Sorry, I'm struggling with it at this time.
Yeah,
Just a
it
minute,
would.
please.
No
I
worries.
can't.
How about this? Go back down. Scroll down on this page and exit this. Back to editing. Yeah, you're recording now.
Sorry.
End recording. Here we go.
Ah,
End recording. No
okay,
worries.
recording. All right, sorry guys.
I know it's your first time with Canva. No worries. These
Yeah.
tools
Should I
back
go back
to
to editing or what?
yes. Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, and just leave it
How
here.
about like
Close
this?
that
Is it?
little, just leave it like right here, and then you can probably expand.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
It's okay now. Sorry guys, sorry Rosane. My first time of using Canvas to present. So a couple of projects by the Readers team. That's one of the ones I'm working on at this time. It's called the Amplify Institute, where we have a couple of professors, Dr. Strong, like I said, the head of the research team, Dr. Kendall in University of Texas, El Paso, with a couple of grad students. We work on this leadership and educational change faculty development program designed for faculty whose primary focus is instruction. We've done a couple of cool projects so far. So I'm on the verge of completing a connected conference and paper that is still on Monday. So it's one of the works that is stemming from this particular project. So we have like 2 grad students at FIU working on this project and 2 other grad students at the University of Texas, El Paso. So so we have also Maze Keali. She's a staff at FIU. She's a part-time student like Morgan, and she's been here for a couple of years now. She couldn't join this call probably because of work. Then also Venetia, I don't know if I mentioned this, we have a couple of undergrad students with us also. They've been doing some awesome projects. They're working on a pre-cap project around energy, you know, with a professor at this time. Venetia is there, then Aman, then undergrad student. Sorry, just a second. Okay, then also we have Arcadia, one of our students also. She's a biomedical engineering student, an undergrad student. Then we have Latanya, Julian, like the other student I told you that works with me on the project. That's the Amplify project. So basically that's all about the team, just like an overview of the team. Basically, we have undergrad students, we have like full graduate students, 2 part-time and 2 full-time students. And like I said, it's been like a platform. That's how I see the Readers Research team, more like a platform that connects with what I love, basically, because I love faculty development. That's my interest in research. I love that so much because of my prior experience prior to coming to the United States. So it's a platform that's afforded me, to connect what I love so much, and also to contribute to the larger education community. So I hope you're going to join us in fall next year. And like Maimuna said the other time, you have a couple of research teams, you could probably choose from. I'm very sure that all of these research teams, we speak to the things that really interest you. All right, thank you once again, Uzain. I'm sorry for the initial glitch. Thank you, Liana. I can take it from here.
Thank you, Vian. All right, Daniel, you are up next.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Those present and those that will probably be listening to this recording later on. I have no physical presentation, but I will be speaking directly. I want to hope that you listen. And so to start with, I'm going to tell you about myself and how far I've gone and how I joined this program. So my name is Daniel, and I had my first degree in mechanical engineering. I had a master's in petroleum engineering and project development, and these were all in engineering. At some point, I had a work experience in an engineering organization, and I see the way, technically speaking, most engineers can't manage the team or the project properly. So as a result of that, I tend to go study another master's program in project management in the United Kingdom. This was also due to my leadership exposure and experience in various fields. Upon finishing my master's in the UK, I traveled down to United Arab Emirates in the Middle East, where I had to work with the Ministry of Education for almost 3 years. So this is someone coming from that has a mix of engineering, social sciences, then work experience in the educational field. While I was working there, I realized that my potentials still need to get out there. So as a result of that, I started looking for PhD programs, specifically in engineering education. So I was looking for a program that has a mix of engineering and education, because I don't want my technical background to go away or to be a waste. So I was searching. Then, of course, you will bear with me. If you have also been searching programs across the United States, you'll realize that there are fewer schools that are offering engineering education, not to even talk of engineering and computing education, where we have FIU being the first offering such field. So I saw a couple of institutions like Purdue. You might have seen that. You might have seen Virginia Tech, and of course FIU, to mention a few. But then, for me to leave my work, for me to resign, I told myself, I want to get into a PhD program where I will be emotionally stable, where there will be togetherness, where I will not feel like a lonely man in the land, where I will be welcomed. So putting all these factors into consideration, I looked through these schools, I checked through their professors' profile, I checked their research papers, what they've worked on before, I checked what people in one way or the other are saying about them. I look at their graduate school students and so on and so forth. Then I sidelined to two universities, which is Purdue and FIU. I had a couple of conversations with some of the professors, sent an email. If you have not done so, try to review some of these professors, look at the research field they are working on, look at how that aligns with what you are interested in. You know, you want to make sure there is alignment, at least to the BRS minimum, and try to see there is something that interests you that probably they are doing as well. And so based on that, I emailed one of the professors, with Dr. Brooke Behani at FIU, and we had a conversation, a very excellent, smooth conversation that enabled me to share who I am, my experience, that enabled him to, you know, talk about his projects that he's working on, my motivation and everything. So we had a very good conversation, and there was this alignment between the two of us. Then I choose that, oh, this is the school I'm going to apply to, you know, based on that regard, because of the alignment, because of the way I see the conversation. It was not just a one-man, this was a professor that was ready to listen to the conversation, that was ready to ask me questions, that is interested in knowing what I've done before, what I was doing at that moment, and what my intentions are for graduate school. So lo and behold, as I speak to you presently, I'm just a current student, a first-year PhD student. It's just been 2-3 months I've spent in Miami, and I can tell you everything is going well. Like, it feels like I am learning. I have a very good conversation with all the faculties. I'm able to ask questions. I don't feel like I'm lonely. I don't feel like I'm not part of this community. Because so you want to make sure that you are a PhD student in such a diversified environment that is inclusive, that gives you the opportunity to learn, that gives you the opportunity to share your experience, to collaborate with other graduate students, to collaborate with even your professors, and so on and so forth. So this is one thing I would say you should look at. Why are you going into this PhD program? And why the choice of the institution? I want you to look at that, because it's going to greatly inform your decision. And not only that, you should also consider, for how long is this going to be? I'm going to be here for 4 years, or let's say 4 to 5 years if you are pursuing a full-time, and part-time, maybe 6 to 7 years, for example. So you want to make sure that this period of your life is kind of tending towards fulfillment. So this is what probably influenced my own decision. And so far, so good. I've been working collaboratively in some projects. One of it is the best project, which was just the most recently concluded project. I'm going to share the website in the chat, so you could probably look at it, check out through what the work that was done and the likes. Presently, there are 2 projects we are also working on, and these are new projects starting from scratch, and they are all fully funded. So basically, the scope of our project is to look at the shared commitment of community colleges to HBCU, I mean the historically Black community and universities. Like, we're looking at the transfer pathway of these engineering students. I won't study engineering or a STEM course at college level. How do we make sure you have a good experience in transferring into an HBCU university? And the other project is now bigger, like looking at the minority serving institutions, how the transfer is being facilitated. In all of this, the project is centered at broadening participation, making sure we have more people of color, I mean the Black men and women, participating in the engineering field. So that's that on the project. And lastly, I know one major thing you're going to be working on at this time is your motivation, your statement of purpose. You know, it might look like just a 2-page, but then this 2-page will be like, what am I going to put there? You know, this is very important. You know, you want to make sure you communicate the right thing to the admission committee. So I will advise, make sure you take it very serious in your statement of purpose. Make sure you have your motivation. I mean, what is motivating you? Why do you want to go for a PhD study, whether it's full-time or part-time? What are your preparation, like what is preparing you to go into this field? What kind of preparation have you had before, which could be maybe from your bachelor's degree, or maybe if you are opportune to have work experience or exposure, or maybe you've worked on projects before. So all these should be properly, tailored towards your preparation or your motivation to this program. You also want to make sure you touch on your research interests. Fine, you want to go for PhD. We know PhD involves a lot of reading of articles. You want to make sure you have, there is a gap, there is something that interests you there is a particular research that interests you. There is something that you want to work on. There is a gap you are seeing in a particular field that you want to make sure you work on. This encompasses your research interest. So you want to, in a bit, communicate that in your statement of purpose as well. If you have professional experience, why not? If that is what is going to distinguish you from the tens of or hundreds of people that will probably apply to our program. So you want to make sure you distinguish yourself out so that the people that will screen your motivation, that is your statement of purpose, will get the right information about you. Remember, this is one key thing that they have about you at this moment, and you're trying to convince them. And of course, you also want to make sure you touch on why engineering and computing education. This you should see as a plus as against engineering education that we have in other schools. So FIU is standing out having engineering and computing education. So you want to make sure you're speaking to that. Why? The why behind that. Your professional goals as well. Okay, fine. What are you doing now? What were you doing before? And why are you transitioning into your PhD studies? And even at that, what is the end goal? What are the short and long-term goals for you making that decision to going for PhD? So highlight your professional goals, and when you eventually end that PhD degree, what will you be doing? Where do you see yourself to be? And probably lastly, maybe your engineering education journey, how the whole thing looks together from maybe your high school to work experience to first degree. If you have masters, why not? Make sure there is a transition in the storytelling, and it should be captivated. It should be real, like make sure it is genuine and it is real and it is hitting the target. And with that, I also want to advise you that beyond all this, you should reach through the profile of all the faculty members, try and have a conversation with any of them. They are open, just send an email to them. In your email, tell them who you are, tell them why you're interested in, maybe working with them. But before you do all this, you want to make sure you know what you are doing or what you are saying. So you must do your own research. So I would strongly advise, if you want to get this spot as well, beyond your motivation, beyond your application, try and also reach out to one of the faculty. And with that, we're going to see you join us in the next fall. Thank you so much. And this is where I'm going to stop for now.
Thank you, Daniel. That was awesome. All right. So since we do have about 15 minutes left before we transition over to the faculty introductions, I particularly, since all of you are international students and we do get a lot of international prospective students, I would like for you guys to just briefly talk about your transition from coming overseas to the US, transitioning to Miami. Any advice you can, I feel like I tried my hardest to prepare all of our new students with coming to FIU and housing and all of that good stuff. But just give them a perspective and, from the point of admission, getting your documents together. I try to stress enough during my segment and talking about the application materials and the admissions timeline, just what that time between when you're admitted and you have to get in all your forms, when you're about to get your I-20 and then you're admitted, but then now it's time to actually come to the US. If any of you can just kind of briefly talk about that.
I think what you asked is a very big question. So I was wondering about, like, is there any specific questions like Hussein might have, then we can get to answer, because there is multiple steps coming before USA, after coming USA, and then thinking about it. So.
And you can type your question in the chat. Okay, he doesn't have any specific questions. Thank you, Maimuna, for sending the link for the international admissions. So Daniel's left his email. Vion, if you could just put your email address in the chat for something. And Maimuna, did you add your email address? Awesome. All right. So if there's no more questions, and I don't know if you guys have any last minute things to add, I can let you guys go early. And we'll pick back up at 1:30 with our faculty presentations. I don't know, are you guys sticking around for those? You guys have already seen them like many, many times. And you guys know them.
Do you want us to? I
mean, you guys can hang out with me. It's up to you.
More like a snippet of what to expect when you join us in fall next year. I mean, it's like a family over here, all right? I mean, so we expect to see in fall. All the best in your applications.
Thank you, Vion. Thank you.
Okay, to touch on that, honestly speaking, the first thing is you want to make sure you get through amongst other competitors. And so I think the very first thing now, before emphasizing to join next year, make sure you tidy up your application. Of course, if the application is not successful, you can't join us. So this is the first thing. When it's successful, you want to join us, we can start talking about other parts and phases of how you're going to come in, how you're going to transition successfully. But the first thing first is to make sure you have a successful application. And to reiterate and summarize, as you're listening to this, the most important thing, your application package, your degrees, if if you're applying to FIU, your transcripts, your student unofficial transcripts can still be accepted in the time being, because I know this is probably, if you are international students, these are some of the things that will probably, oh, I can't get my official transcript now, so that means I can apply. No, 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 you can still make your application, reach out to Ileana, and you probably know how to send your unofficial transcript for the time being. So while you do that, then if you have your official transcript, you can send it along the line. But for the sake of your application, we also want to make sure, with transcript solved, importantly, I am advising, remember, I'm speaking from a student lens. Well, try to reach out, check the profile of the faculty, try to reach out to those that probably have a research interest that aligns with yours, okay? Once you keep a date on that, then your application, try and turn in your application before the official deadline. This is very, very important, before the deadline. In fact, let me tell you that I applied roughly, I think, 6 months, no, I think 2 months before the deadline. So I had a very early application, 2 months, at least 2 months before the deadline. So you want to make sure you are not turning in something that is not standard, something that will not compete with others. Take time to work on your motivation letter, regardless of how good you are. I mean, your statement of purpose, regardless of how good you are in writing, you want to make sure you have your first draft, put the pieces together, recall some of the inner content I've highlighted to you earlier on. You want to make sure they reflect in your statement of purpose. After that, you want to make sure you take a second look at it. Don't rush at it. Take your time. If you have someone that can help you proofread, you want to make sure that is done. Listen to their feedback. Listen to their suggestions. Try to incorporate or edit as you see it deem fit. Then your final draft, make sure your final draft is something you are 100% sure that is going to compete and is error-free, grammatical error-free, and it's the target. I think these are the most important things. Once you've done that and say your application has been then applied to FIU, if at any point in time of your application you have a problem or anything, don't fail to reach out. Reach out to our special program, our special administrative coordinator, Ileana. Reach out to her, ask questions so that it can help you through your application process. You don't want to take anything for granted, trust me. And it is not automatic. You can't get to this, you can't get this admission just automatic. You have to fight for your slots. So make sure you fight a good fight. And when we successfully have you, trust me, it's going to be an easy transition because we're going to help you. We're going to tell you how everything is to go. And for now, Daniel, take care.
Thank you, Daniel. All right, everyone, I'm going to wrap it up. Let me pause.
All right, do the slides, are they showing up okay? Okay, great. And has the recording started? Okay, great. Fantastic. All right. So now is a chance to meet Succeed faculty as you get a chance to learn a little bit about each of us and our research. One thing that I want you to keep in the back of your mind is that as you're thinking about PhD programs, ideally you're finding a program where there's not just one, but at least a couple of professors that you would be interested in working with. As Daniel just shared with you all, sometimes faculty do leave institutions. And so if you've applied to a program where there's one and only one person you're working with and that professor moves to a different institution, then that's a little bit of a challenge. At the same time, when you are in graduate school, you'll have one usually one faculty member who is your major advisor, but then you have several other faculty members who are going to be your committee members. So that's another reason why you want to make sure you're choosing a program where there's at least 2 or 3 of the faculty that are doing work that is interesting to you. With that said, we will go ahead and start telling you a little bit more about each of ourselves. And so I'm going to share about myself first. So again, my name is Monica Cardella. I am the director, aka department head for the School of Universal Computing, Construction, and Engineering Education, also the co-graduate program director, also a professor of engineering and computing education. And so I wanted to share just a little bit about how I got to engineering and computing education. I was a kid who grew up in the Silicon Valley near San Jose, California. And my dad was one of the first video game programmers. He worked on a very early version of the game Frogger. And some of my childhood experiences were around, learning about coding, learning about computers, learning that code can be created to create games and create other things too. I also grew up in an area where there were a lot of engineers, and people would tell me you should become an engineer because you're good at math. But as I got older, I felt that was not quite enough of a definition of engineering, and I really wanted to get a better sense of what is engineering really beyond just the thing that you do if you're good at math. When I was a graduate student, I was the only one in my program who had a focus on engineering education, because that was in the time before any of the programs existed. So before Purdue had a program in engineering education, before Virginia Tech, before FIU, before any programs existed. So instead, my PhD is industrial engineering, but my dissertation research did focus on an engineering education topic, looking at how senior students who are about to finish their undergraduate studies use math in their capstone design projects. Now, a lot of my research focuses on engineering design processes and practices. Actually, that's true across all 20 plus years of my research has been looking at engineering design processes and practices. Initially, it was undergraduates, later graduate students, practicing professionals, more recently, children as young as 5, 6, 7-year-olds, as well as teachers. A lot of my research also looks at learning in out-of-school settings, whether it's engineering or programming or integrated STEM, as well as family engineering experiences. So how do kids with their families talk about and learn and do things related to engineering or computational thinking? So my recent projects have been around computational thinking and what does it look like for a 5 or a 6 or a 7-year-old to engage in computational thinking or learn things that are related to programming, as well as undergraduate students and their computational identity. And then most recently, the thing I'm really thinking about these days is just thinking about how to empower learners, whether it's 5 or 6-year-olds or undergraduates or whoever the learner is, to be not just receiving information, but co-designers and co-leaders in designing their educational and their learning experiences. With that, I will hand it off to the next Succeed faculty member, Dr. Strong.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here, whether you're hearing the recording or you're here live now. So my name is Dr. Alexandra Koso-Strong. I'm an assistant professor, and I was one of the first 2 hires along with Dr. Fletcher into the Succeed School, as well as in establishing the engineering computing education program here at FIU. A little bit about my journey. So I come from a family of educators and coaches. And so even at the early age of like 6 or 7, I would go into classrooms and try and figure out, why did the teacher do this the way they did? Why is it set up this way? What were the motivations? How is it supporting students? My brother would tell you that I liked playing school at home way too much because he would much rather have played something else with me at the time. When I went to undergrad, my degree was in aerospace engineering. And even then I found myself really enjoying being an undergraduate teaching assistant, running review sessions for students, and mentoring students in organizations that I was part of. But I didn't find engineering education until I was pursuing a master's in systems engineering at the University of Virginia. And what is a much longer story and comedy of errors was really an opportunity to work with a faculty member who was doing research in engineering ed and he said I could kind of prototype it with him. He was studying interdisciplinary engineering programs and their impact on students. And so as part of that, I had the opportunity to get to know engineering ed as a field. But it really wasn't until my first American Society for Engineering Ed conference that I realized how much I loved the community as well as the research area. I got to the end of that week and I really felt like I found my people. I was so excited to have the conversations with others, talk about my previous experiences, talk about how I would do things differently as an educator, and also recognize how rich the research space really was. So I ended up then at that point pursuing a PhD in aerospace with a focus in human factors. And one of my motivations was to really understand the complexity of the design in the context of aerospace and how we think about humans, including students, more in the context of aerospace vehicle design. So now my research has shifted a little bit, but similar to Dr. Cardella, I still have design as a central focus, both in how I approach my research and the things I study. So I've studied engineering design, looking at students as well as practitioners, and I've also taken design into the educational development space. So what I mean by this is, how do I support aspiring and current educators to really look at how they teach and approach their classes from a design lens? So understanding who they're designing for, understanding their constraints, generating creative ideas, prototyping, etc. So some of my current projects are focused in the context of how do we do research on and also design professional development experiences for faculty. So you'll see in the projects, there's one focused on instructional faculty. So these are individuals whose primary responsibility is teaching in an academic institution. And there's also a project here focused on graduate program directors. So these are individuals who are working with graduate students through the admission process all the way to graduation. And part of that project is the design of professional development. The other part of my research area that's on here is this idea of critical transitions. And so this is where I really see my systems background come into play and why I want to take a systems perspective on engineering education and innovation more broadly. So a couple of my projects focus on these transition points, one of which is a project with Dr. Fletcher that's really looking at the transition from an undergraduate experience at a historically Black college and university into a graduate program in engineering or other STEM field. I've also looked at transitions into academic positions from graduate school, from high school to college, to really understand what people are experiencing, what supports they have, and what we could do to improve those transitions. I think the last thing I will mention here is that a lot of my work, especially over the last few years, has focused on Hispanic serving institutions like FIU and more broadly minority serving institutions, but I do work across multiple institutional types. I just find that understanding our context, both structure and culture, really adds a lot of richness to the research, but also allows us to better understand what solutions or innovations might be most effective. All right, I will stop there and pass it on to one of my colleagues. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon or good morning or wherever you happen to be in the world as you're watching this. Thank you so much for being a part of our discussion today. I am Brooke Burhani. I, along with Dr. Strong, am an assistant professor of engineering education here in Succeed. I also serve as the undergraduate program director for our interdisciplinary engineering program. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you along with my colleagues today, Dr. Cardella, Ms. Lindsley, and the rest of our students. We're so grateful that you've joined us. So I'll tell you a little bit about me and then some of my interests. So I am an engineer turned engineering administrator turned engineering education faculty member. And I'll tell you a little bit about each one of the pieces of that journey. So I had a traditional undergraduate engineering experience. When I say traditional, I don't mean that in any sort of pejorative way, that what we do is not traditional and not valuable in engineering education. But I came out of a lab where I was focused on nanotechnology, did that for a couple of years, and I found that while it was useful and stimulating to my brain, it was not where my passion was lying. So I did move into some work around engineering diversity through a fellowship I had with the National Academy of Engineering. There was some work around a website called Engineer Girl or engineergirl.org. If you ever look that up, I was working on that way back in 2005. And so thinking about what that meant at the time, I thought I was just working on a website, but I was doing these things with the website that were called focus groups. I'd never heard of focus groups at that time. Turns out that focus groups are a key part of qualitative research that I use today. So I had the chance to talk to middle school aged girls about their perceptions and reactions to this website and what needed to be, what we could consider further with respect to that website from an engineering diversity lens. And that was my first foray into engineering education diversity research, but it only started there. It really has continued on that arc ever since from that time. Along the way, though, I took on a position as an engineering diversity professional, working at a college of engineering, where my job was to recruit and retain, or at least recruit through scholarships and outreach programs, more students of color, more women into engineering. That was my practitioner job. And so that work lasted over a decade, and that gave me a tremendous amount of experience into the everyday lives of undergraduate students, as well as the faculty and staff with whom they work in order to be successful. Specifically along that journey, I developed an interest in the community college as a means to broaden or diversify the engineering field. The reason that that's important is because, at least in the US, and depending on where you're watching this or what country you may be from, community colleges are really big in the US. They are two-year institutions, after which many students transition to a four-year university and earn their undergraduate education in everything from STEM fields to humanities and the arts, etc. Well, it turns out in engineering diversity, we have just begun to consider the importance of the community college to increasing diversity. And so that has been really the bedrock of my research in the last few years. There are a couple of engineering projects I'm working on here to the left that you can see. One connects community colleges to historically Black colleges and universities that you've heard from Dr. Strong. I'm also involved in a project newly funded from Colorado, where I'm working with Colorado community colleges and four-year institutions to build more engineering capacity there. I am doing some work on the K-12 side, and K-12 is just an acronym, or P-12, meaning pre-kindergarten all the way through the 12th grade. So really looking at primary and secondary school. My focus tends to be on secondary school within that space. So I'm working on a funded project called Engineering for Us All, to bring an innovative curriculum to young people, to inspire them to become engineers, or at least learn about engineering ways of thinking and doing. And finally, there's a recently funded project through one of our faculty in mechanical engineering, or biomedical engineering rather, that looks at teacher and undergraduate student partnerships within the secondary school space. So happy to talk more with any of you. Love to talk more about my research, as we all would. And thank you, and I'll pass to my next colleague.
All right, so Dr. Trina Fletcher, unfortunately, is not able to join us, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the amazing work that she does. So Dr. Fletcher, like Dr. Strong, was here from the beginning of FIU's School of Universal Computing, Construction, Engineering Education, and the ECED PhD program. Her journey to engineering education included her experiences with her mom and her mom working at a manufacturing plant, her time as an undergraduate student at a historically Black college or university, and then the experiences that she had being able to be a part of the PhD program in engineering education at Purdue, where I had the pleasure of being able to work with her there too. A lot of her research has a very clear focus on diversity, equity, inclusion within STEM education, both engineering and computing, where some of it has focus on in K-12 and pre-college spaces, similar to what Dr. Burhani just talked about, as well as thinking about higher education spaces. As Dr. Fletcher was finishing her PhD at Purdue, she also had the opportunity to work with the National Society of Black Engineers in their pre-college programming. And you'll see in the bullet point underneath research projects that one of her most recently funded projects is now a partnership with the National Society of Black Engineering, kind of building on some of the work that she did earlier. The National Society of Black Engineers has a summer engineering experiences for kids program where the focus is on providing opportunities, especially for Black and Latina children, to be able to learn engineering concepts as well as be mentored by undergraduates and teachers who themselves are also Black or Latina. So some of her research is in that space. Some of her research is similar to what Dr. Strong was describing before, looking at students' experiences at HBCUs, looking at students' experiences transitioning from HBCUs to graduate school. Dr. Fletcher also collaborates with some of the bigger centers that are attached to FIU. So the one that is CEL-MET, they're under research projects, is in partnership with mechanical engineering here at FIU, as well as Boston University and a couple of other universities. I'm forgetting the full set of collaborators, but some of these big scale projects. I would say maybe the last thing I'll highlight is just her bullet point about COVID-19 impact on STEM and engineering education. I think we all can imagine all of the many ways we all have a lot of familiarity with the way that COVID-19 has impacted experience with STEM and engineering education, but Dr. Fletcher is doing important work to really look at that in a systemic way. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, colleagues, but especially within HBCU settings, is that right? Yeah. So, Dr. Fletcher would love to be able to talk with you more if any of you are interested in learning more about the work that she is doing.
All right. Hello again. My name is Stephen Seekels. I'm an assistant professor, and you heard from me earlier, either on this recording or on the Zoom call, as co-graduate program director. So now as a faculty member, I'm here to tell you about journey to engineering education, research topics and projects I'm working on. So an abridged journey to engineering education. I had an engineering degree, got an engineering degree, and then worked in industry. My part of industry was acoustical engineering. I helped design buildings for sound and vibration communication type issues, help solve them for like architects as clients. I was working in that for about 5 years in a couple of different places, including internationally. It was exciting, I liked it, but at some point I would say that one, noticed challenges with diversity and equity. I'm not sure I would have had those words for it at the time, but I was very coming to like a more clear understanding that, the diversity that maybe I had grown up with in the school systems I had like studied in for elementary, middle, high school, we had a lot of gender diversity in my college. I was just noticing that they were not in industry with me, that we had narrowed the diversity down to mostly white and Asian men, which had me reflecting about what is my role in this as a white man. What should I do about that? Should I stay in industry and lead and try to create change? But some impulse about me felt that that wasn't the right role for me, that I like had more questions, like deeper questions about like why these issues persist. The curiosity, I think, was the thing that led me towards the PhD in education, particularly curiosity and a desire to have impact. From what I understood about a PhD, and it has proven true, I think the curiosity, the drive to ask questions for yourself and figure them out, and then kind of lead that research to have impact, I think is like a key desire that matches a PhD. So I moved to a PhD in education and focused on equity and culture in undergraduate education primarily, which then led me to this type of job in engineering and computing education. So within equity and culture in undergraduate education, usually I'm often thinking about equity issues that happen within classroom spaces, but also outside of classroom spaces. I run a group called Equity Research Group, and I'm very open to expanding the definition of equity. But a lot of my work has been on kind of classroom dynamics. looking across, I say intersectional inclusion, just essentially like a lot of different categories of equity and identity and power to be looking at. So gender, race, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, and I think kind of like the more practical side of student support, retention, and graduation as well. Current projects I have been looking kind of in the space of improving equity and culture in undergraduate education. I've been looking at using qualitative research with students and audio dissemination, meaning just like using an audio format like a podcast to help make a resource to prompt more inclusive understanding of students for faculty. So that's one ongoing project. I have a project supporting lower income CS student career pathways. And I have a project, a pair of projects on empowering students to help transform educational institutions, to help transform universities. So those are the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion JEDI project, and then the Voices Organizing Change in Educational Systems, VOCES project. So that's that theme. And I'll pass it along. Oh, my contact info is up there on the left, and I'll pass it along to probably Stephanie, Dr. Lund.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm Stephanie Lund. I'm an assistant professor of computing and engineering education. My journey is, like many of my colleagues, not necessarily quite so straightforward. I started off in neuroscience and I obtained a bachelor's and master's degree in neuroscience. I was doing traumatic brain and spinal cord injury research. I ended up transitioning to industry after deciding that I was tired of doing injuries on mice. And I worked in healthcare and in marketing. There was features that I wanted to add for one of the companies that I was working with to the website, and I had to keep going back to the team. I didn't like having to ask someone else for help, so I learned how to code on my own, fell in love with it, and decided to go back to school. So I obtained another bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in computer science, and my dissertation work ended up focusing in the computing education area, specifically the hiring process in computing, and trying to understand the experiences of Black, Hispanic, and mixed race men and women. And then I completed a postdoctoral fellowship in engineering education. I have since focused on professional and technical development, both in computing and in engineering, looking at things like the hiring process and how students may work through technical problems, but also trying to cultivate empathy and other things along those lines. So my research topics focus broadly on professional and technical skill development for undergraduate and graduate students in both areas, as well as trying to explore the computing touch points, access points, and experiences that can offer engagement with a discipline. And I know those are a lot of terms that you may be less familiar with, so just to give you a bit of background, touch points and access points are the different things that we refer to that may help an individual to feel connected to the discipline. And while it may not lead to a long-term trajectory, our goal is to figure out what those may be and how we can potentially turn it into something that will help to make it a long-term engagement. So trying to understand students' experiences, trying to find different ways that may be meaningful for them, whether it's self-study through online programs or participating in clubs and organizations. And so that leads into some of my current projects. So right now I'm working to develop a software to help students practice for interview training. So one of the first things that I'm looking at is trying to develop what type of content needs to be there based on feedback from hiring managers. And then also integrating this into the system, which will use 3D interactive virtual avatars to allow students to gain practice with a virtual hiring manager. Going forward, I'm also looking at trying to understand women's trajectories to a computing career, some of the touch points or access points that may have been meaningful for them, working to develop programs for upskilling and reskilling, planting re-entry seeds using emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning to broaden participation in computing, as well as creating ethical modules to embed throughout the computing curriculum. So rather than just trying to place them at a single point in time, trying to understand how we could create opportunities for students and educators to think about ethics throughout the entire computing curriculum. So it's a lot of different topics, all related to some of my different areas. and expertise. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to visit my website or contact me directly. And thank you so much for joining.
All right, thank you to each and every one of the Succeed faculty team for sharing about your journeys to computing and engineering education, as well as your research. We have a couple minutes if there's any questions. And Eliana, I think we can stop the recording if you haven't already.